So I'm so excited for what's next. I'm so excited to keep showing people really like how much I have to offer. And yeah, I hope they'll be along for the ride because it sucks if they'll miss it. You know, honestly, that's how I feel.
Hi, I'm Hannah from NME and I'm joined by Rebecca Black, the latest in our In Conversation video series. Hello.
Hey, I'm good. I'm excited.
How is London treating you?
It's been so good. I mean, every time I've been here, I feel like I'm literally like in and then gone. But it's been really fun, and I'm just really excited for tonight.
And this is a big week. Your debut album, Let Her Burn, dropped yesterday. Mm-hmm. How exciting. How do you feel now having it out in the world for everyone to listen to?
I don't know if I've like fully processed it. I mean, when you're on tour, like you're already in just what feels like an alternate universe, you know? And I've been trying to like bring myself back to what's going on as much as I can because things just like fly by, but it's a pretty insane moment. And I think like once I get home, it's gonna hit like a brick. Just how long I've been waiting to have this and how exciting it is.
Were you nervous at all, Wednesday evening, waiting for that moment when it dropped at 001 on Thursday?
I think my heart was beating really fast. I don't know if I was nervous then. I think the nerves hit probably like a couple weeks ago when I realized it was about to come out, and I was like, oh shit, like so many people haven't heard this part of myself, and it's a pretty vulnerable album lyrically, so that hit. But I think now like I got to play the album basically front to back for a few shows unreleased, and that was really cathartic. After the first show, I was like gone. I just couldn't believe what had happened, and I couldn't believe I'd played it, and I couldn't believe people had finally heard it, and I was like numb for a few hours. Yeah. It was good.
It is very honest throughout, both about heartbreak, like all aspects of relationships I feel like are in there. How was it when you listened to it start to finish the first time, when you're like, this is a debut, it's done, and this is what I'm going to share with the world? Yeah,
it definitely feels crazy how different it can sound once you hear it like fully finalized, fully mastered, mixed. You've listened to every song like a million times. And some of these songs particularly took a few months to get done. So hearing it all finished, I think I was surprised by like how complete it felt and how right it felt, and how after so many years, I mean, I spent basically half my life being like, what is my album going to even sound like? Like, I just don't know because it doesn't exist. And dreaming of this moment for so long, finally hearing it and seeing it, like every time we reached a step of being closer, like the cover art finishing, and even though they were all my ideas, it just felt insane to see it realized and be like, oh, this is who you are. And that felt really comforting. But yeah, also just like a bit out of body, to see yourself in that light.
Yeah. When did you start working on it? Has it been, on and off for those 12 years you mentioned?
You could probably say I've like attempted to make this album for 12 years. And there were many times when I definitely announced that there was an album coming before it was anywhere near being ready. But I think really what feels like the actual starting point it was right before we released my last project, Rebecca Black Was Here. I finished that project, but I just never really stopped as far as like creatively. I kept going. There were songs that had been written technically for that EP that I just wanted to finish, even though it wouldn't be on time for that or right for that. So it's been about 2 years, I'd say, like really thoroughly in the making.
And were there any artists you were listening to that particularly inspired the project at all?
I think it's kind of an amalgamation of everything I've listened to my whole life. I mean, I love, obviously, like pop artists like Madonna. I love Gaga. Those are huge, like lifelong inspirations for me. And I think as like just a woman in pop, big inspirations. I also love artists like Sleigh Bells and Poppy and Nine Inch Nails and Burial and like garage was like a big, excuse my lack of accent, but like those were all big influences that we would just kind of be like floating through a vibe in the studio before even really starting anything, just kind of listening to things that we were liking at the moment. And, you know, I think that there's threads that kind of find their own way through each song.
Absolutely. And when you were going into the studio, you know, maybe day one of official album work, what did you have something you set out to achieve? Because obviously that, you know, a debut album, there is maybe a little bit of pressure there.
A little bit.
Yeah. A little bit.
Yeah.
What did you set out to achieve when you first started?
I mean, I wanted to make something that would not only like, a lot of people have been talking about this moment as like a redemption moment for myself, which is great. Like I have a hard time sometimes even coming to terms with the fact that it's a redemption, because it feels like I'm just beginning, but I get why it is. And I think I just wanted to emulate what I always knew that I could do. And no matter how impossible something felt, like it would be to create or achieve, I wanted to try to do it and show people that like there really is no limits. And I guess show myself like you don't have to have limits on what you can and can't do, or what's, you know, what fits who you are or whatnot. If it feels right, it feels right. And I wanted to make a fucking good album that I could look back and be like, even if 10 years from now I listen to the album and I'm like, I don't know if I love the songs, at least I'll know like, oh, you did what you wanted to do and what you needed to do. And that is enough, you know?
Did you actively think you want this album to be completely solo?
Featureless?
Yeah.
There were discussions in certain songs about like, oh, maybe we should send it to this person, but it was a really like insular process. I mean, this album was executive produced with a really good friend of mine, an amazing producer, Mika Jasper. He did like 7, I think, of the songs on the album. I think that there were a few songs that were like, ooh, someone would be really good on this, but then it just felt complete when it was done on its own. It didn't need anything else. But yeah, so I don't know if I set out for it to be featureless, but it felt right that it was.
Would you do like one of those remix albums where you get people to hop on and maybe remix the tracks at all?
Maybe I would. I love a remix.
Yeah.
I there's so many artists that I would love to work with, but I also love just being able to write with people in the room too. So that's something I'm really, really interested in.
Amazing. And I want to dig into some of the songs specifically.
Okay.
I think Performer is just such a beautiful song. It's so honest though. Those lyrics, multiple versions of the same person, all of them hurting, don't think the performance is working.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like a lot of people will relate to that. What kind of inspired you when writing that song?
That was the last song that made it onto the record and was written for the record. And I wrote that with this writer, Lauren Aquilina and Mika. And it was actually the first day I met Lauren, I think. Definitely the first day we were working together. And I think it felt like I had come to the end of the process. And I was like, I'm pretty sure like we're almost done. But there's something I haven't been able to say, and I don't know what that is. I feel like I'm coming to this moment where like, I feel like I'm about to accomplish something, but I have never felt like so as a personal or on a personal note, like never felt so isolated. And I don't know if this is something that's becoming worse for me as like a person. The more that I'm like finding myself, the more that I'm kind of pulling myself away from people that I love. And I just started digging into that with her, and I think that's just part of who I am. And I wanted to try to express that of like this, yes, I do perform for a living, but like aside of what I do for a living, I think I am like the greatest performer in terms of who I am in my relationships with my friends and my family. And when I look to my family, oh my God, I'm just like my mom. I'm just like my dad. I'm like them in the best ways, and I'm like them in the worst ways. And I also watch my parents, you know, with so much love, obviously, but I see the way they get in their own way. And it's scary to feel like, oh God, how do I stop? And so I just wanted to try to talk about that experience, I guess, that feeling.
Was it cathartic to work on it?
Really emotional and cathartic, yeah. I mean, it's nice when you can start to identify like why you are the way that you are, or what even a feeling feels like, because so easily like it just flies as like a thought, you know?
You know, the rest of the album is equally honest. When you're working on that, were there any songs that were like particularly difficult to write? Any feelings you're like, oh, I'm feeling this, but maybe I don't want to share that with the world?
I mean, I think what unintentionally became an important part of the album was talking about like my own misgivings, probably more than anything else, and like my own faults more than other people's. It's been so easy and so fun to write about other people and how awful they are, right? But I think I'm in a moment in my life, I'm 25, where I'm learning how to really question myself and hopefully make some positive changes, or not, I don't know. I'm trying. I think if there was one song that was probably the hardest, Performer was pretty hard, but there's a song called Cry Hard Enough on the record that a lot of people have already kind of like taken on as like a breakup song or a heartbreak song, but it's actually a song about my mom, and a song particularly about the struggle I have with my mom, I guess, you know, being such a positive force on my life, and teaching me so much about what to do and what not to do, but I watch her make the same mistakes that she tells me not to make. And that's her own, you know, journey to live, and she has the right to live how she does. But as her daughter, sometimes I think it's hard to watch. And I've written a lot of songs about my mom because we're so close, and she knows that. But I don't know if she knows that one's about her. So
I was going to say, does she heard it and know that? Or
I think she's heard the whole album.
Yeah.
She's actually like on a trip right now doing her thing, so we haven't gotten to talk about it. But she's been to the shows, and yeah, I don't know. I actually don't talk much about like songs that are about people I know to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, another song I was going to ask if maybe your family heard was Doe-Eyed, because it's pretty saucy.
It's saucy. Yeah. I don't know if they've heard it. Well, again, my mom's been to a show, but I don't know if she knows what it's about, really. I don't really care. I mean, I'm 25. I think the internet sees me as like a lot more of a fragile person than, or maybe like youthful person than the people in my life do. Like, it's not crazy to talk about sex as a 25-year-old. And sometimes I've talked about sex to my family, which is weird, but like it happens, unfortunately. Yeah. And I think that song is also important to be on the record for me and for other people, because it's just a part of where I am. And I don't think that there's anything shameful or like not legitimate about that, you know, and talking about sex in a way that's fun and free and maybe a little risky and not so serious. Like, that's kind of how I approach it.
It's really interesting what you said there about the internet maybe seeing you as more youthful than you are now. And I think that is a thing where often, you know, people know you from Friday when you were 13. And I think often, you know, if people break out like that initially, they kind of freeze them in time. Have you said they feel like that? Do you kind of see people still thinking of you as that teenager we maybe saw 13 years ago?
You know, I've kind of come to terms with the fact that like I can't control the way that they'll see me. And I do think that certain people do still see me as, you know, whether it be creatively or artistically or as a person, you know, as a 13-year-old or a 16-year-old or wherever they found me. And I think that was maybe one of the things that hit me a couple weeks before the album came out. Like, oh, I didn't really think about how like sensual this album was, because it's just a classic part of who I am, as any other person would be. And I find it really empowering, you know, to express that, and also as like a fan of music, listen to songs about that and help me kind of get into my body. But yeah, I do think that in a lot of ways, I can't control the way people see me, but it's not going to stop me from creating, because that would be really bland.
How is your relationship with that time in your life now?
I mean, I think I've made a lot of peace with it. And honestly, like on a day-to-day, it feels like 12 years ago. It feels like half my life ago. I don't really remember who I was, like many of us try to forget who we were in middle school. But at the same time, it's almost like there's this image that people always use of the Friday video that is like literally just like close up screenshot, me, first pimple I ever had on my face, purple t-shirt, whatever. And like I've almost had that thrown next to who I am now so many times that it doesn't even feel like a personal version of me anymore. That's a version of people, or a version of myself that people have like characterized so far. Like it's not even a real person, really. And who I was in that video wasn't who I was at the time either. It was just like a 3-minute moment of my life that didn't even exist, you know? So, yeah.
It must be wild, because I think back to what I was like when I was 13 years old, and it's like obviously there isn't a recollection like that, but I'm an entirely different person, and of course you are too.
Of course, as a 13-year-old, you have no idea who you are. You have no sense of self, and I think that's what made that time in my life particularly difficult to get through, is everything that people told me, every piece of advice or opinion or critique that people gave me was just like automatically true to me, because well, if you were older than me, then you knew better, you know. That's what we teach kids. So that was the hardest part about getting through that moment. But yeah, that version, that time in my life almost feels like it's not really even mine anymore, because everything I needed to heal from, I healed from already. Everyone else is just like doing their thing with it.
And kind of looking to the future, what do you want to do next, music-wise? The debut album, it's been long awaited, it's here. Have you even begun to think about what you want to do past it?
Totally. I mean, I love to write. I love to create worlds, and like, you know, as this is such a huge moment and I wanted to get it so right. And I know how quickly everybody moves, you know, and there's so much I have to say. There's so much I want to do. Like, this really feels like finally, these last few years really have been so many like beginning moments of like, oh, we're onto something. I feel so good about it. So I'm so excited for what's next. I'm so excited to keep showing people really like how much I have to offer. And yeah, I hope they'll be along for the ride, because it sucks if they'll miss it. You know, honestly, that's how I feel.
Amazing. Well, I think that is a really nice place to finish. Rebecca, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks very much.